Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the DS Show. Today, I am joined by Director of Product Revenue Operations at Anaplan. Please welcome my good friend Timothy Brennan. Welcome to the show, Timothy.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dinesh. It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you having me. I'll do a small correction. So I'm on the revenue performance applications team here at Anaplan. No, just distinctly different than like our go-to-market revenue operations team. But I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Yeah, looking forward to this conversation. I know we've had a chance to interview a few folks on the Anaplan side from product, and it's always great to hear what's going on in the Anaplan world, especially with the latest sort of shift towards the application framework. But before we dive into that conversation, I'd like for you to please introduce yourself to the audience, a little bit about you, and kind of your background pre-Anaplan and what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, I guess odd to say, but I've been in the enterprise planning space for over 20 years now. So I started my career in a little boutique consulting shop, largely focused on Hyperion, Oracle, TM1, Cognos at the time. I once I left consulting, I worked over in the corporate finance department at Fidelity Investments, helping to manage their corporate planning solutions. And then from Fidelity, I moved more into data science analytics role. I reconnected with an old colleague, and we had a small data science consultancy prior to me joining Anaplan back in 2019. So I joined Anaplan in the pre-sales organization. And I spent a couple of years in the pre-sales organization. I focused my time on, I didn't have, I had a background in corporate finance, but I was kind of a utility player in being able to support opportunities in either the supply chain, particularly due to kind of the focus of when had a consultancy. We were very focused on forecasting, particularly demand forecasting. So I could also kind of support supply chain opportunities and also some of the SPM stuff as well. I'd say that my transition out of pre-sales into product came. We were Anaplan as a company. We're beginning to launch our first forecasting product, and given my background in the space, I saw that as an opportunity to help evangelize and bring to market our Plan IQ offering. So I spent some time crafting that story in the pre-sales organization, trying to build out a little bit of I'll call it like an advanced analytics practice in pre-sales, because I just felt, I felt for unrightly so that Anaplan was maybe on its back heels in terms of like our analytics story. And I really just do think the platform itself has a really strong value proposition in how we kind of support analytics and making sure they're tied to the decisions that are being made. So I spent a lot of time in pre-sales crafting that story. And then when Plan IQ rolled out, I jumped over into the product organization in the product advocacy team, supporting our intelligence pillar. So supporting Plan IQ, predictive insights, our optimizer. And then, as I'd say, just like career wise, like that's certainly a passion of mine, but I'm not the type of person who has kind of a career path of like, I always want to be president of the United States. I kind of look for, well, what's the most interesting challenge for me to hop into. And right around after a couple of years, probably about a year, once Plan IQ got going, Anaplan was starting to really think deeply about solutions and applications. And as admittedly an early skeptic of that, but it did sound like a really interesting challenge to solve. So I kind of supported that from a strategic level, thinking through how the company is going to transition or evolve into also supporting applications. And then about 18 months ago, once we kind of had that story tied down, I transitioned into supporting the sales applications, which we're now calling revenue performance applications full time. So I'm on Dan Kohlhofer's team, and we have a really exciting start into that like applications journey and some deep functional focus in the area of revenue operations.
Okay. Well, that's quite a fascinating journey. I think there's a little bit of like a entrepreneurial, pit stop you made there, along with going from pre-sales into product. Can you talk a little bit about just some of those shifts in kind of mentality or mindset from a career standpoint, going from an entrepreneurial, like I guess what made you kind of jump into that, and then what was the shift like going into pre-sales and then product?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, entrepreneurial, that's I love that. I mean, again, it's I look for like messy challenges, and exciting challenges. So that's like an area that was, of deep interest, and it's still an area of deep interest for me, particularly now as the world seems to be kind of shifting under our feet. Uh, for me, pre-sales is, I still believe, is an incredible place to come into the Anaplan ecosystem. I can't really think of another role where you really get to understand the product, and not only the product, but how our customers think about our product. Um, and you just get to interact with a lot of different parts of the ecosystem. That's really just, it allows you to absorb and quickly kind of ramp your skills up into understanding like how Anaplan works. So I feel blessed that I came into that team, and the people I were working with were really fantastic. But that also just allowed me to think about, where else in this organization can I start to add value. And as you transition over into the product organization, that is an entirely different type of thinking. I was probably more in an evangelical role early on, rather than like a traditional product management role. But still, it is getting to work closely with product management and engineering. Like, there is a broad spectrum of like different ways of thinking, where, in pre-sales, we are very much there to tell a story and to inspire people as to what is possible on Anaplan. And I think that does, Anaplan, as the flexible as the platform is, it does really reward the clever. And I think that's, it says a lot about the platform, and it really excites people in that role because they get to do that every day. Now, the knock on pre-sales would be like, oh, you're showing things that are impossible to build in production. Um, but I'd say it's, that's the next level of like building an Anaplan model, is always like, well, let's take that art of the possible and like let's make it a reality. And now you're thinking about, well, how do you take what was positioned and make that reality for this particular customer? Getting into that implementation production mindset. And I'd say, like, now, as I'm more focused, or we've been deeply focused on applications at Anaplan, that is an entirely different mindset, because now we're not thinking about, well, how do we implement something that is production scale to spec for a particular customer, but how do we really develop Anaplan as a product, so it's something that serves the needs of a much larger addressable market, or many customers. And it's just an entirely like that, going from pre-sales to kind of how our solution architects are thinking about it, into how we think about it as a product. Those are really three titanic shifts in thinking there. But it's exciting to understand like the nuances of all of them.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating. And before we dive into some of the more roadmap stuff, any piece of advice you'd give to any, folks looking to break into pre-sales consulting, solutions consulting, I should say. Um,
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I think in pre-sales, there's two things that are really important. Like, one, I've heard the quote before. Um, selling is the successful transfer of enthusiasm. So you have to be really enthusiastic about what Anaplan is doing as a company and what the product is capable of, to be effective at what you do. So I think that's really important. Uh, I think the other really important thing is or an understanding that our customers are buying from us more than software. They're buying collaboration and a partnership. And so we talk a lot about, or we have, and I brought it up again earlier this year in one of our breakouts during our sales kickoff, was the great book, I forget who wrote it, but called The Challenger Sale. Really focusing on teaching our customers something, not just being like, hey, what every other vendor can do, but they're coming on a journey with us. The expectation for us is really high, to help educate them on what best in class looks like in the industry or the functional area that they're in. And so coming to the table with a point of view, and being able to teach the people you're showing Anaplan off to something about something that's going to make them better at what they do, is incredibly important. And that's hard. I mean, but I think it's a huge responsibility and necessity for pre-sales or sellers in general to take on.
yeah, because in a way you're taking on sort of that trusted advisor or authority figure role.
Yeah, exactly. We work with hundreds, thousands of customers. So we see a lot more than any individual buyer at a particular customer has seen. And so we just have a tremendous treasure trove of knowledge to offer them and to share with them. And I think that's how you build key partnerships.
Hmm. Now, if you kind of take that, framework, it sort of feels like that seems to be the foundation of what's kind of going into the app strategy, right? Where you're sort of embedding the best practices, leading, thought leadership around some of the key industries and functional areas. With the revenue planning application, that seems to be kind of your area of focus. Are you able to kind of walk us through sort of maybe first of all, just high level, like what's kind of the vision behind the apps in general, and then we can kind of double click into just the specific application you're focused on.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you made a really astute observation. Our Anaplan's entire motivation with applications is that we have for a decade plus been a market leading planning platform that our customers have generally organically decided that Anaplan is the best technology to implement a solution in a particular functional area. Like I've said, Anaplan historically never set out to say we are going to build the best go to market planning solution. We never said we're going to go build the best demand planning solution. Through access to the platform and through some guidance by our partner ecosystem and us, our partners have, our customers have just said, Anaplan is really good at these, a certain subset of business planning activities. Like not only really good, they are the best at it. So we look at that as a bit of social proof, and we're excited that that got us to where we are today. But having seen our customers say things like, well, Anaplan's the best at territory and quota planning, like over and over again, and seeing that implemented in the ecosystem over and over again, hundreds of times over the past decade, we really look at that. Again, this is a challenger moment. This is a teachable moment. We have so much knowledge, and that is an opportunity for us to see what we know, or to take what we know is working and how our customers across industries are being successful in a particular functional area using Anaplan, and package that up in a better way to get to our customers, rather than saying the platform itself is really good at this, and ask them to, in one way or another, reinvent the wheel over and over. Like we think there are kind of core foundational capabilities across all lines of business that we're operating in that applications do make sense for. And that's not to say that an application is a 100% solution. As I said, I've been in the enterprise planning, enterprise software space for 2 decades now. I've never seen the 100% solution. There's always like unique things that you want to tweak and make your own as a business. And that, I think, the fact that Anaplan applications are deployed on the Anaplan platform is what makes them so special, because our customers can take what is now coming out of the box and focus on like real value add differentiating activities that become a competitive advantage for them, rather than having to kind of reinvent the wheel and things that we know that works well.
And it seems to be like, Anaplan sort of following the playbook of some other major SaaS players like Salesforce or ServiceNow, where, that sort of seems to be the playbook there for how to kind of scale from a certain point and get to kind of that North Star you guys are trying to hit.
Yeah, different journeys. I think those are companies we aspire to be. I think as companies grow up, like I said, like our platform itself served us really well. We became really successful on that. But as we talk about internally, like what gets us to 1 billion isn't what's going to get us to 2 billion. And we have to think about how we mature as an organization and bring our solutions to our customers in a better way. Like we saw that with Salesforce when Benioff shut down really the entire company for a couple of years as they rolled out force.com. I don't think the market reacted well to that. But looking back, what a great idea. Same thing with ServiceNow. I believe ServiceNow started out as really just like a singular like IT offering or a platform, and they said, look, like we should really focus on selling into the office of the CIO, and that's really what allowed them to take off. So those are two really textbook examples of companies who kind of saw what they had and said, like, let's really think differently about how we're going to continue to grow they made a big bet, and it paid off. And so we're hopeful that we're doing the same thing here.
Yeah, and I think one of the key themes, if I just can extract out, sort of feels like you want to sort of be the one that's helping the customer in their journey, not just from a technical standpoint, because there's a lot of systems out there that can kind of mirror some functionality, maybe not all the way that what Anaplan can do, but essentially it seems like the differentiating factor that you guys are sort of trying to position Anaplan in a way where it's, hey, we're partners in this with you, right? And we want to kind of help the customer, along the journey with how to kind of roll out a system implementation, but also just how to kind of just kind of what is some of the best practices in the world, and just kind of help coach and educate and guide them through their journey.
Yeah, our customers are the most important thing to us. We talk a lot about how do we make people heroes. I think Anaplan presents a lot of opportunities to do that. So it's certainly top of mind for us. I think, more specifically on my team, as I mentioned, I sit in the revenue performance management applications team. Half of our team is focused on developing the applications. My half of the team is really the advisory arm. And the advisory arm is really focused on, well, look, how do we enable and up level our internal teams, whether that be pre-sales or customer success or professional services, to have more educated and better conversations with our customers. We have solution advisory teams that go out and work directly with our customers to make sure they're thinking holistically about how they're going to plan, not only for like the next implementation, but how they're going to plan for the next 3 to 5 years. And we want them working closely with our customers because it's incredibly important for us. And then we also have hired really like advisors like with deep domain expertise, whether it be in sales operations or the office of the CRO, because we want our customers to have access to that mind share. Like that is the entire focus of my team, and it's a huge focus of just Anaplan organizationally.
Hmm. So your team now is working on this revenue performance application. You get assigned sort of this North Star that, we want to roll out best practices. There's an application framework. Where do you start?
So, I mean, I think we start like our team really thinks about what is the unique value proposition for Anaplan. And I really do believe like this is an evolution of our connected planning story where Anaplan is the only vendor in the market that can holistically address planning capabilities, not only across like say the office of the CRO, but connect those pieces across your entire company, your entire organization. Like we have a lot of success in your supply chain, in sales performance management, certainly in the office of the CFO. So like that connected planning story is something we look to build on. So in the revenue performance management space, we think about what are those foundational capabilities that we want to deliver to our customers via applications. And I think about that in three separate pillars. I think about that in terms of go to market planning, thinking about, well, how are you going to size your market? How are you going to strategically segment and score your accounts? Like, where is the place that I should be selling to get the most ROI? Then you think about, well, look, I have these financial targets. Let me think more broadly about my go-to-market capacity planning. It's another application we released a few weeks ago in San Jose. So not only thinking about how do I know that I have enough sellers in place to go meet my financial targets, but think about all those ancillary pieces that you have to make sure you have capacity to support if you hit the targets you need. Things like your customer success organization, things like your pre-sales and overlay organizations, things like your services organizations. And then how much does that cost? So we're really trying to be thoughtful about how we help our customers plan and do resourcing in go-to-market. And then also that final piece, how you're carving your territories and distributing and setting quotas. So T&Q. Territory and quota has been an application we've had in market for about the past year and a half. And then at San Jose, we completed that go-to-market planning story with segmentation and scoring and capacity planning. So that's kind of the planning pillar. Then I think about, well, how do you incentivize your sales force? Things like incentive compensation management and design. Like that's another area of intense focus for us that we're planning on releasing something next year. And then the execution pillar becomes your sales forecasting, your pipeline analytics and optimization. And so these are all areas that our customers have leaned heavily into Anaplan to support. And they're all areas that we think we can package up that information and deliver it in better ways to our customers. And so those are like when I think it's like plan, incentivize, execute. And then, as I said, those are the foundational capabilities in the office of the CRO. There are dozens of other planning, like ancillary planning activities that are happening there. And that's where customers can lean into the value of the Anaplan platform. So any of those other types of modeling exercises or planning you can do it on Anaplan and connect them right into our applications. Or if you want to take something like go-to-market capacity planning, and naturally the headcount decisions you're making there are going to matter for the company in general. Well, we've got a great operational workforce planning application now as well, and connect those pieces, or connect kind of accruals and your crediting rules over to your finance department. We have a great integrated financial planning application right now. So it's an exciting time for Anaplan because, like I said, I think our connected planning story is really coming to life.
Yeah, and I think you kind of beat me to the punch there because that's kind of going to be my next question is, you talked about just kind of the suite of apps you guys are working on with the Office of the CRO. Was going to ask more so just around how do you position that because you're building out great applications for the Office of the CRO. How do you position that and still tell the story of a connected planning journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, it's look like there. It's more for Anaplan. It's more about connecting just the office of the CRO. And I said, like Anaplan is not. We don't have the capacity or the intent to build applications for everything. We look at like what are the key foundational capabilities that we have. I think we have a unique advantage in delivering on our own. Those are the applications that I described. Then our customers can build on our platform to build out all those other ancillary planning activities. We're working now with like our partner ecosystem because like partner built applications on our new platform application framework are going to be critically important as we grow. Again, kind of taking some notes what Mr. Benioff did over at Salesforce, and kind of the economy that has grown out of force.com. Like that is our aspiration. Like we really do think we can play in a planning space. It's a different area than your CRM, but that's what we're looking to do. And so like I said, we have a connected planning story. I think we're improving upon it. And our application team, my application team, is also talking to the office of the CFO or our finance application team, and our workforce planning application team, and our supply chain application team. Things like S&OP have natural connections into the selling process. So we're trying to make sure that we can bring all this to life for our customers.
And now, can you talk a little bit about just kind of how far you've come along in the journey from an application standpoint up until today, and then what does the future look like in terms of what's on the roadmap?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's been a fast and furious 2.5 years. Like we probably started thinking about this 2.5 years ago. That happened to be right around the time where Anaplan was purchased by Thoma Bravo. So there's lots of moving pieces in the business. I'm super proud of like how far we've come, given not only kind of the dynamics of being purchased, but just the macroeconomic dynamics of what happened post COVID. There's always things disrupting like our business and how we think about it. And I think for us to go from a platform company to a platform company that also has applications in such short amount of time is really impressive. And like I said, there's a ton of people, a ton of hard work went into that. So I think as I said, early on, I was skeptical of like whether or not applications were a thing that made sense on Anaplan. And ironically enough, I'll say like one of the tipping points for me, not only is just I saw the progress and the innovation that we were able to do internally that kind of got me over the hump, but I go back to a guy who I spent a lot of time kind of supporting their products, and then I spent a lot of time competing against, which was like Larry Ellison. And I think I caught a couple chapters in one of his books called Soft Wars, where he was just talking about how critically important it is that offering kind of that, I'll call it like the 80% solution to a customer, is so important in convincing a customer and teaching a customer to not spend 2 years trying to go from 80% to 100%. Like that is the trap that we're always falling into. And so I think with like applications, what's been really inspiring for me to see is that we do have our customers looking at what comes out of the box and having that be able to be stood up really quickly, say within a matter of a few weeks. We're at least able to have our customers react to what will this application look like in your environment. And then they're in a much better position to say, okay, I see how this works. We don't do it exactly like what you have here today in this particular process, but we could. That's not a big deal. I don't have to go spend 5 weeks redesigning this process. And so they're able to make those trade-offs in terms of like time and investment. And they're saying like, it's more important for me that I get a process up and running quickly in Anaplan and learning how that works. And then maybe a year from now, once we get through a planning cycle, we'll come back and we'll revisit all of these like nuanced changes we think we need. But what we're seeing happen is like that mentality that builds our customers and our champions a lot of goodwill in their organization to go do more stuff in Anaplan. And I think that's just been like a really rewarding experience for me to see our customers go through. They can see the application quickly. They're able to make better decisions about what they need and what they actually don't need. And then they can move on from there.
Yeah, so it sounds like one of the key factors there is, one, the applications help with just speed of getting up and running, from the moment you purchase it all the way through, once you're stood up and you're live. But two, also like on a larger scale from a honeycomb standpoint, it's sort of shrinking the timeline that you can sort of expand those.
Yeah, I think it's a great, we talk to a lot of COE teams where, I think the natural tendency is to say, well, I like building. I'd rather build this. I don't want to buy the app. And I think the reality is what an amazing way to expand your sphere of influence. Because like I said, we're not going to build apps for everything. Anaplan's not going to do that. And I'm sure anybody sitting in any COE can think of a million things that they'd love to do in Anaplan. Like Anaplan can light up the world of an organization. It can make you heroes. So applications really are a way to kind of just proliferate Anaplan more and again, like lay down those foundational capabilities. Don't spend time reinventing the wheel. Put in place what works, make the trade-offs and figure out where your time is more valuably spent.
Now, speaking of time, I think one of the areas that a lot of CIOs, maybe CFOs, CROs, that a lot of these companies have mandates in place to implement AI as part of their tech stack, and as part of their kind of technology vision for the next few years. Where's Anaplan kind of fit into that? What's kind of up and coming in terms of AI with Anaplan?
Yeah. So, well, one, that it's a weird mandate, like just use AI somewhere, but you do hear that everywhere. There's,
That's
I think,
thrown around, yeah.
yeah, everybody's rethinking of like where they get the most bang for their buck. I think our CTO Adam said it well. It's a productivity story. And so for like Anaplan, I think Anaplan is really well positioned here. Like I think Anaplan, like we already think about like our calculation engine is like these are the GPUs of for businesses. There is this decision layer, this orchestration layer that I think Anaplan is primed to support well. Like where AI is going to fit into Anaplan in the future, my hope and our discussions internally are everywhere. Like I don't think it's a bolt-on thing. You'll see, I think early on you start to see some bolt-ons. We're testing some things out with our co-planner and we're thinking about how we advance our ADO product and our forecasting product. But the reality is it does force a rethinking of like everything that we do. And we're super excited about that. It's not, we're preparing for a future where enterprise planning may shift dramatically. I'm very excited about it. And I think it's just super important. I've always said for us, like in terms of AI or advanced analytical capabilities, like we are a planning company at our core. And so for us, when we're thinking about where we're going to make investments in this area or an innovative tech area, emerging tech area, we have to be super thoughtful about that and think, does this capability naturally complement the planning process? Which is why you see things like Optimizer built into our platform, which is why you see things like Plan IQ built into our platform, because forecasting and optimization are natural complements to the planning process. Now we're thinking about co-planner and how we make the user experience inside applications a lot easier. It's really, it's again, for me, it's not a let's just pray and spray AI or like the vanity analytics all over the place. It is like, how are we thoughtful about this and how are we making our users and our customers more effective and more efficient about what they're doing?
Well, really appreciate you diving into the revenue planning application. I think we covered a lot of different areas from where things started, where things are currently, what's on the roadmap coming up ahead. I do want to pivot a little bit here and actually talk about you, Tim, the person behind kind of all of this, right? I think it's important for the audience to sort of get to know the personalities that are kind of working on this stuff behind the scenes. And one thing that I always like to ask is, when you think about your day job currently, what part of it excites you the most?
Well, a lot. I mean, I think, look, from an RPM, a revenue performance manager perspective, I think Anaplan has clear market leadership here. And I very much look at it as we are trying to grow a business and we are really trying to support our customers. And I think what's exciting there is, again, having spent 20 years in the space, so much of the focus has been on financial transformation, the office of the CFO transformation. And I do think coming out of a post-COVID era where we saw sales teams dramatically scale down and think about, well, look, all we care about is efficiency. Now they're thinking about, well, now it's profitable growth. And what that is really leading to is a rethinking of or a focus on go to market transformation or transformation in the office of the CRO. And I'd say that, the team I get to work on is laser focused on helping to support our customers go through that journey. So to me, that's a big boulder, that's a big mountain to climb. That's a challenge that I really love. The other thing also, I just do think it's the the technology shift with what we've seen in the last 2 years, and I'd say like almost like monthly or weekly at this point with AI. It is disruptive. It is incredibly intellectually challenging. And just as a matter of personal curiosity, I've like never been more inspired or thrilled about like what's coming. So like that is how in a way, it's hard to clear my head sometimes because there's just so many pieces of like the entire landscape that are going to shift dramatically over the next 18 to 24 months. Like it is had you asked me a year from now, my thoughts would have been a lot different than they are today. It just seems like everything is moving a lot faster than I would have imagined. And I imagine things are going to move pretty fast. So I think this kind of the time and the place and the moment we're in just keeps me going.
Yeah, it really feels like one of those once in a lifetime sort of moments, right? Where this AI thing is sort of just coming out and happening so fast. Now, if you think about just your role in terms of product management and sort of to anyone listening who might be looking to break into the space, kind of get into product management, from your journey, you started off in pre-sales and sort of made the transition into product, and you've also had some several experiences beforehand, of course. What advice would you give to any aspiring product managers out there?
Yeah, I, to be clear, I don't know that I'd consider myself a product management. I operate in the technology and the product organization. But it's a craft and an art that I like deeply respect. And I think I would encourage people. I do think like that is one role that, again, with some of the shifts in AI, will dramatically change. And I think the value you have in that role will really depend on I'll say taste and like a deep interest and a love in what it is that you're doing or the users or the customers that you're trying to support. Because I think it from a craft perspective like that job of product management, a lot of the maybe the painful work or a lot of the things that used to take the most amount of time might not be the case anymore. That probably is not the case anymore right now, and so it does open up a whole new amount of time for people to really care deeply about like what it is they're doing in terms of the experiences that they're allowed to offer through product, which to me is tremendously exciting. Like I can say like, I can moonlight as a product manager, and I love doing that, like iterating back and forth with like an LLM to get to kind of place where I wanted to go, and even like quickly coding up prototypes. Like it is an incredibly exciting time in that area.
Awesome, Tim. Thank you so much for your time today. Before we wrap up, is there any last words you'd like to leave our audience with? Any last piece of advice or anything cool or exciting you want to share that maybe we didn't get a chance to cover?
Well, I certainly, again, thank you so much for having me here. I would just, it's cliche to say, but I do, encourage everybody to stay curious here. Like the old Steve Jobs, like I think the stuff that's happening right now with tech, with AI, it is incredibly important for everybody to play with the tools available, learn how they're used, because in almost every aspect of our jobs or our lives, there's something to be taken from here. I think I heard, Jeff Bezos say that, you know, these LLMs are not an invention, they're a discovery. And I think we're all like discovering how they can be used. So I'd encourage, your listeners to keep pushing the limits there, because it's, we're in for a wild ride.
All right. Well, on that note, we're in for a wild ride. Appreciate your time, Tim, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.